What do you want to talk about today?
What I want to talk about? Well,
Just talk to me.
just talk to you, okay? Oh, man.
You want to talk about growing up in Mosquito Flats?
Mosquito Flats. Oh, boy. Well, it wasn't very far from the swamp, for sure. And here comes Granny.
What are you going to tell me about Mosquito Flats?
Oh. Well, I'm trying to figure out where they got that name from, for one thing. I've been for a number of years, but live over there very long, you find out. And around the edge of the river swamp, where we lived, mosquitoes got bad. And there was a whole marshy area through Mosquito Flats. And, but it was a good place to grow up in. I enjoyed it. A lot of special, precious memories there. And I'm trying to remember some of them. I do remember going in the swamp behind the house and going back and sitting down squirrel hunting and steel hunting. And so I shot a squirrel that was across a little slough or stream of water. And I walked across the footlog to go over there and get my squirrel. And I got over there and sitting there just waiting for another squirrel to show up. He didn't show up, but the darkness did. I was caught way down in the swamp there, and it dark as pitch dark just about it. And I couldn't ever find the footlog. I wouldn't even try to walk it back in that kind of conditions. But anyhow, I started out and walked all the way back down to Escambia River, down the trail that goes in from Century. And then it connected with another old logging road that came out up at the Escambia River Bridge. And so I walked all the way into the river and then turned and walked back out to the Escambia Bridge and it was a pretty good little walk around through the dirt roads going through Mosquito Flats. And but the only thing I had was the tree lines to guide me. I could look up and tell through the treetops that I was going in a clear path. But I finally got out and got down close to the house, and I saw something coming down the road with a flashlight flashing here and there. Got up there, and I had already figured out who it was. It was my sister Betty. She was out hunting. Oh, man. Oh, we had so much fun over there fishing and hunting and going to school. I enjoyed school there.
Where'd you go to school?
Century High School. First elementary school and then high school. 12 years.
Do you remember your first day of school?
Yeah.
Well, tell me about it. If you remember it, tell me about it.
Well, my first day of school, the teacher, this one particular thing I remember, the teacher was going around asking us to tell us our name. And so that's where I really learned my first name, because everybody called me Junior before that. And that's all I ever knew was Junior, because I'm Thomas Little Jr. And so when it came to me, I said, Junior Little. And the teacher looked at me and she says, well, Junior, let's just call you Thomas, okay? And so that's where I got found out about my first name.
Who was that teacher?
Winnie Diamond. She married Preacher Wolf, and they both passed away. Funny thing was, many years later, after I retired, after having a heart attack, I don't know if we was living here then, or I went, Jay called me to see if I could fill in for him one Sunday. And a couple of the members from First Baptist and Jay had come over and visited with me at Brat one day. And so I knew just about everybody at First Baptist and Jay anyhow. So they called me and asked me if I could come over and preach. And I got over here and walked up to the pulpit to preach and looked out. And there was my dear little old first grade teacher, Miss Winnie Diamond Wolf. And it really kind of shocked me for a minute, you know. And usually when I'm doing something like that and something shocks me, I tell everybody. And I told everybody about Miss Wolf being my first grade teacher. But I remember her, she was young and kind and real sweet. And that was my beginnings in the field of education.
Did you play football in school?
I went out for football, but I went through spring practice, and then this following fall, I went out for the regular team, you know, and I spent several nights practicing, and the problem was I couldn't see at night without my glasses. And so if I tackled anybody or made any kind of play, it was strictly accidental. Now, I could outrun the whole football field. I could do a 100-yard dash in 9 seconds, but couldn't anybody keep up with me. Even the two fastest halfbacks, two fastest starting halfbacks, they wanted to race with me, and I did 100 yards in 9 seconds. It took them 10 seconds. I looked back over my head, and they were at the 10-yard line when I crossed the goal line. And, oh my! But I was just accident waiting to happen.
Did any accidents happen when you ran out onto the field ever?
Yeah. I run into a telephone pole, run straight into it, didn't see the thing. When I pulled my glasses off and left them in the locker room, well, you know, here come a accident waiting to happen. Oh my. But I had fun doing it, except it got where it was affecting, it gave me being under the stress at night, under the lights, got where I was having bad headaches and things because I couldn't see. When we would get out practicing, and they, before the game, warming up, you know, just kicking the ball back and forth. When I was on the receiving end, I never saw the ball, but it found me. Yeah, I remember it hit me in the chest, boom, boom. And I remember one time it hit me upside the head, and oh my goodness. And I remember spring training game when we were out there warming up, and I never could do the side straddle hop, they call it. And I was like, you know, a sick duck trying to swim in muddy water or something, I don't know. But anyhow, my sister Betty, we were having the spring training game, and it was usually a pretty big thing in the spring of the year. So my sister Betty said that everybody in the stand was just laughing when I come out and try and do the exercise and everything. And then I was in on a kickoff, and they kicked the ball downfield, and one of my friends told me, says, "Thomas, you're real fast. Now let's get down there and get that ball." And so I took off down that field full speed. I got knocked down 3 times, and got up. I come up running. I was pretty agile back then, but I come up running, only to get knocked down again, and then jumped up and kept going and got knocked down again, and never did see the football. And so after the game was in the locker room, the coach was back there with us, and coach says, "Hey, Little, did you ever see the ball tonight?" And I had to confess, no, I didn't. It was just, oh my. I could see fairly well in the daytime, but under them lights, I just couldn't see.
That's funny.
Everything was fuzzy, just...
Well, you liked to draw a lot when you were in high school.
Yeah, I drew a lot. Yeah, I still got some old drawing materials in the... I forgot where I got them now, but they are in the computer room or in one of the rooms back there.
Did you do anything for the yearbook drawing-wise, or any of your drawings used in the Century Yearbook?
Yeah, 1954 and 55, I believe it was, they asked me to help them. And I used to draw signs all the time for if they had needed, like they had each room numbered, sometimes I'd have to repaint the numbers on the board and started wearing out. And I loved to draw portraits. And in our literature book, there would be a full-page portrait of the author of the material we were studying. And I'd end up, every time I would make a bunch of pictures of them, do a lot of portraits of those writers, and sometimes had a buddy that would take them and stick them up on the wall out in the hall.
So you were studying hard.
yeah, I was studying real hard.
Well, what did you do after you got out of high school?
Well, first thing I did was didn't do much of anything first of the summer. Then I went to a friend of mine, Ethel Slate, got me a job down at Wilson Packing Company. And so he was married to my cousin right up the road here, Laverne Lacey. And so they were living in Pensacola, and I went down there and lived with them for about 6 weeks, I think I made it. But I went to work for Wilson Packing Company, and I had the job as being the junior man, so to say. I got the worst job, and so I had to work at night. And what my job was to take orders and go back in the freezer where they keep all the meat and the beef quarters and so forth. And then on the other side, it was just a cooler, though it wasn't a freezer. Well, I guess it was in a way, but it kept it, temperature was a lot lower in there. But they kept the things like bacon slabs, they kept them back there, and they'd sell it to the stores and everybody around that was buying, you know. And of course they had a delivery truck, they delivered it out. And then we'd get a delivery truck in several times a week, and we always end up having to unload it and put it in its place. And I remember salting down a pile of bacon back there. It just come in open slabs of bacon. People bought it and sliced it up and sold it in the stores. And so I remember the first night I was there, he showed me what to do, and he said, the foreman that is, he says, and don't spare the salt, put plenty of salt on it. And so when I got through, I had used, I think, about 20 100 pounds of salt on that pile of bacon. And so that's what they told me to do, and I did it.
That was a ton of salt.
That was a ton of salt, yeah. That was a salty place. Oh, man.
Well, tell me how you met your wife.
How did I meet my wife? Let me see. First of all, I was friends with her brother, two brothers, and her oldest brother was Jack, who was pastoring he was in school in Lakeland when I when I first met Joyce. He was in school in Lakeland. But anyhow, we started having what you call it, them bunny hops, dancing. They were building a new house down there, and you know that one. Remember it because it was new when we'd go in the living room. Wasn't anything in there, but just open floor. And I'd take my record player and all the music I had down there, and we'd put on a record, and we would go wild. And the funniest thing, somebody should have recorded it, was me and Mr. Carnley dancing together. Because neither one of us didn't know a thing about dancing, but we got out there and kicked our legs and waved arms and hooted a few times. It was wild. But that, it was clean and wasn't anything ugly took place or anything. But we had a lot of fun. And I met Joyce when we were doing that. And let's see, that was in, I guess, the fall of 1957, and in 1958, I finally had the courage to ask her for a date, which I really didn't ask her. I just went down there, and I better not say this rest. Granny might see it. But anyhow,
go ahead.
I asked Joyce if she'd like to go to the movie with me, so she went. And I remember the movie that day. I think it was Glenn Ford and Don't Go Near the Water. And that was in 1958. And then we dated and got married on November the 12th, 1959. And so we went to the movies mostly, occasionally to a ball game. Went to a lot of ball games so when football season was in. And I was a graduate of Century, and they were all at J, and so we'd have a time. I'd rag them, and they'd rag me. Oh, goodness. I was a lot younger then, too.
What other things did you do with Mama's brothers?
Her brothers?
Yeah.
Mostly hunt and fish. Of course, occasionally we would have a bunch of us together up down there, and where the forks of the road was, this big clear area, and somebody would stand up top of the hill and hit the baseball down there, and we'd try to catch it. And I remember one time going down after chasing a baseball, it was way to the right, and I was watching that ball, and about the time it hit the glove, I hit the ditch. Just sprawled out lengthwise in that ditch. But I held on to the ball.
Well, I've heard a lot of stories about, that was about the time old Betsy come around, your 12-gauge shotgun.
Oh, I bought it in 1956. Yeah, that was one of the first purchases I made when I was working at Pensacola. I don't remember how I got it home from down there, because I was staying down there, and I'd catch a bus, ride the train back up to Fulton, and walk back down to where we live in Central there. And you couldn't do that now with a shotgun, and I don't know if they let you do it then. I don't remember how I got that thing home.
You're hitting your microphone.
Oh.
Yeah, makes a noise.
Oh.
Well, what'd you use that shotgun for? Tell me some stories about it.
Oh, me. I have shot squirrels with mostly, a few rabbits.
Did y'all ever go coon hunting?
We went hunting. I don't remember what it was for. I know we saw a lot of coons, because down back of where Uncle Carney used to live, he had just picked his peanuts, and we came around up through that road that comes up through it. We had worked our way around the edge of the swamp, and we walked back out that road, and I had this strong headlight that fit on my cap up here, and it was real strong. You could see out there 300 or 400 feet, I imagine. But anyhow, Uncle Carney's field was full of coons when you come up there, and I don't know if we killed any or not, but
Well, Uncle Ray tells a story about there being a coon up in a tree, and he told you to shoot up in there with old Betsy, and you did, and it rained acorns for 2 days.
Yeah, that was a common thing. That thing made such a racket. You were in the woods, you could expect the acorns to come down around you.
Well, you surrendered to preach somewhere around 1968, 69.
69.
Tell me about that. Just tell me the whole story.
Well, Lord called me to preach when I was 17 years old. Right after, well, let me think just a minute, 1955, October 1955, he called me to preach. But it kind of scared me, because I really didn't want to be a preacher, and that just shocked me, and I just ignored it. And several times over the years, he reminded me in different ways. And then I remember when I was working at Monsanto in nylon development research, I was stripping some yarn off a bobbin, getting ready to check the denier on it, and the Lord spoke to me again. And I'd always made the excuse I couldn't go and preach and get the kind of education that I wanted, because I had a wife and 3 kids. And the Lord spoke very vividly and clear to me that night. He said, "Tom, if you'll go preach, I will take care of Joyce and the children." Very vivid to me. But I still ignored that call. But then in 1969 was when it's a real long story there, so I won't try to tell you all of it. But anyhow, I was working at Monsanto still, and I was working, I had a 2-week period of time that I was just broken and couldn't do nothing but cry. And so it just about was, I almost committed suicide the last night of graveyard shift. And, but about the time the fellow I was riding with, R.C. Jenkins, pulled into the yard, And I was in such a torn up state of being, I just grabbed my lunch and jumped in the back of the car, or station wagon. And I went on down, went to work, and I still was torn up. And I went out to, I first got there, I was working in the Draw Twist area at that time. And so I got there, a good friend of mine from Milton, Bobby Shoup, he was a deacon in Olivet Baptist Church, I think, at that time. But he was a real devoted Christian, and so we'd been talking a lot over the years, and he was very spiritually sensitive to issues, and so I'd been talking with him about a situation, immediate situation then. And so that night, I went out, first thing when I got there, as soon as I made shift break with the other shift and got everything going in the right direction, I ran out to the spinning area to see him, and we talked just a minute, and I went back to my area and worked for 2 or 3 hours. I was still in a very emotional, broken area. I mean, my being. And so I went back out to talk to him, and when I went through the airlock doors between the spinning and Draw Twist area to where he was working, well, when I went through and come out the door on his side, I saw him go in the door on the other end, and so I went out, followed him, and I caught him in the coat lag right next to where I was working. He'd gone out to check on me, and so we sat down and we talked a few minutes, and discussing what all was going on and everything, and he looked at me and he says, "Tom, the Lord's calling you to preach." And immediately, instantly, it was just absolutely unbelievable. All the emotional state of being cleared up just instantly. My head cleared up instantly, and it was just like a new life. And so that was when my call to preach, when I surrendered to it. It'd been there for some 14 years. The Lord kept nagging me, and so he nailed me down that time. Oh my. But the Lord's been so good to us and so gracious to us. I remember the first night I preached at Coram, I could hardly, I don't think we had microphones back then, but my voice was so low, I don't think anybody understood what I said. Didn't preach but 15 minutes anyhow. And so, first of all, before that, I had to get up and before the church and tell them about my call to preach and everything, so they could verify me and give me a preaching license, so I could preach, in different churches around. And which all that didn't matter with me. I'd have preached anyhow, license or not. But that's the protocol for today's way of doing things, which if it don't affect my physical or spiritual being or anything, well, don't bother me. So I got up the first time I preached 15 minutes, and I can't even remember what I preached on now. But anyhow, after that, I began to preach here and there, and preached around a number of places around the J area, and or if you call what I was doing then preaching. Oh my. But it took a year and a half before we could get things worked out, and so we could move to Graceville, and we went to BBI there. You remember that?
Yeah. Let's stop. Part 2, Tom Little.
Oh.
Well, we talked about you getting called to preach. Then you left to go to Graceville. What was it like moving away from Jay and going to school and just, you know, it was a total move of faith. So explain to me how you felt when you said, I need to go to Graceville to BBI to start my school.
How did I feel?
Yeah.
Well, I felt good about it because I knew I felt like the Lord was leading me in that direction. And that school had been recommended to me, and for back a number of years before that, I would read every year in the Pensacola News Journal where the new students were coming in and starting to school and everything, and that just that really burned in my heart for years, because I wanted so much to learn the Bible the best I could. And so it was just like a dream coming true in a way.
Was it scary going there, leaving your family and Jay and moving to Graceville? Leaving your mom and dad and
no,
sister?
No, well, it didn't bother me any. Because sometimes you just have to walk by faith and realize that God's going to take care of the rest. And He has. Never been a time when He's ever let me down.
What was it like going to school and working a job and with 3 kids?
Well, the first 3 months we were there, I couldn't hardly stay awake. I got so tired and sleepy working at night, and or not at night, but working half a day at the Western Auto, and then coming home about 6 and getting on my studies. And then I have studied one time. I studied till 4 o'clock in the morning, and then lay down for a couple hours and got up and went back to school and started the routine over. But my body was just aching all the time because I had to work and go to school. And I remember when I finished my amount of time in school, got all my hours from a degree, and the graduation didn't happen until about 4 months, I think, after I finished up my work. So I just worked on it full time at the Western Auto. But that was a good time for me to rest up. Because I was so tired. My body ached the whole time. And it felt so good to go home and go to bed instead of having to go home and get a book and read it. But it was a good experience for me.
Well, thinking about that time at BBI, what did you learn the most while you were there? What was, if you had to pick out one thing that helped you the most in becoming a minister, what would that be?
Well, there were so many things. I love the Bible study. The Old Testament, New Testament had good professors in each one. And of course, the main thing that helped me out pastoring a church was not only the Bible study, but it was learning how to deal with people. And Dr. Drone was my professor in that area, which was Christian psychology and counseling. And so that was very good, very helpful. And there were other studies there that I enjoyed. I don't think of any study that I didn't enjoy as far as that goes.
Okay. Well, you left BBI and went to Louisiana College. Why did you choose Louisiana College?
I don't know. Well, let me say, I put it this way. I contacted Mobile College, and I got no response from them. Very little, just one little 2 or 3 line letter. But I contacted Louisiana College, and I got a tremendous response from them. They really sent me a lot of material telling me about it and what college life was like and everything. Plus, my Old Testament professor, Dr. Jerry Lee, had graduated from Louisiana College, and he played an important part. Plus, there was, I can't remember his name now, came to Graceville from the college and preached in a chapel. And he also came into our Old Testament class with Dr. Lee. And he impressed me, and what he told me impressed me. And he taught with Joyce some out in the, she was a receptionist. And he taught with her, and we were both impressed to go that way. And they were the only ones that really responded to us in a good way.
Tell me about your time at Louisiana College. Is there any memorable experiences there?
Memorable experiences? A lot of them. Goodness, can't think of which one was the one of the most impressive one was New Testament Greek, and that's been a most helpful, one of the most helpful classes I've ever taken, because I can go to my New Testament. I got a New Testament Greek, and I can go into it, and with my study helps, get a little more specific idea of what the New Testament is saying. And that was really a big help for me. And my professor, though, he was the most awesome person I have ever known. Dr. Nikolai Alexandrico. Dr. Nick, we called him. But he spoke, did I say he was Russian? I didn't. He was from Russia, and he was a lieutenant in the Russian army when World War II was over. Well, he got captured just before the war was over and was in a German prison camp. And the Russian leaders had told him, save the last bullet for yourself, don't be captured. And he didn't, and so because he didn't, he couldn't go home to Russia, because they would have executed, and he knew that several had been executed, and in the men his age group, there's only 2% of the population in that area, because the Russians execute many. That's what they tell me now. I'm not sure on that, but anyhow, he was a big influence on me in Greek, and I think the kindest, most humble person I've ever known. And he even drove out to the Pastorium at Linscomb to bring my final exam out. I had forgot to pick it up, and he drove all the way out to Linscomb to bring it to me. He was just a fine person.
Okay, you were talking about Dr. Nick and being an awesome professor. Were there any other people at Louisiana College that you remember and that were special to you?
Yeah, there were several. Miss Bowman was our history teacher, and I'm telling you, she made history come alive for you. And I just had her for the one course, but she was great. And then for the second part of the history part, I had, I can't remember his name, but he must have been about 6'8" or something like that.
Okay.
My other history professor was Dr. Howell, and he was so tall that he would lecture and put one of his feet up on top of his desk. It was a funny sight.
Oh, I bet.
And he was a good lecturer too.
Well, while you were at Louisiana College, you were called to your first church. Tell me about that.
Well, let's see, I preached all around central Louisiana, and this was in the fall of 1974. Lipscomb called me out in view of a call, and so I went out and preached, and they called me, and took them a while to get to decide, then the fella supposed to call me kept forgetting or putting it off or something, apparently because he didn't want me out there. But anyhow, I went out. We moved out to Lipscomb in about December, I think, after Christmas. We moved from the little house we lived in out to Lipscomb Church, and they were building a new pastorium, and we lived in the old pastorium until they got that one built, which was only a couple of months later. Then we moved over into the new pastorium, which was the best place, nicest place we'd ever lived, and we enjoyed it there. I know I did. I enjoyed it there, and it was a real good experience, especially with a fishing pond at the end of the house one way, and then on the other side of the church going down the hill, there was deer crossing. Of course, I've never been a deer hunter, and I never shot at any or anything, so I left that up to Gilbert to do that. And but one day, one of the most memorable days, I went down to the fish pond with a number 8 brim hook, just a little short cane pole, and wigglers. And right in the end of that pond, down in the corner, there was an old dead pine tree had fallen off in there. And so I started fishing around the edge of that tree. And in about 20 minutes, I had caught 5 bass that weighed, all of them together weighed 20 pounds. So that averaged out 4 pounds a piece. But that was the best fishing I'd ever done, because I usually don't ever catch anything.
Are there any other stories about the church that you remember?
About Lipscomb?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, I remember one time we were having a little conflict in the church, and so we had this fellow by the name of Bud who was right in the middle of it. And so I was preaching away one day, and I was hitting on the conflict stuff, and I said, "We got to nip it in the bud." Looked down, and there sat Bud, his arms crossed, Oh, man, crazy things happen when you're preaching. Oh, man, but we finally ended up, I think, becoming friends before we left. And I'm sure there's some there that were glad that I was gone. Of course, our best friend out of all the years of preaching is still over there, and her husband died here several months ago, and she remarried. Talking about Mert Wilbanks, and I can't remember, Patton, is that her last husband's name? Jill Patton, I think is what it is. But nevertheless, she's been a good friend all the time, all these years, and stayed in contact. And she and Jean actually came over here and stayed a few days with us since we moved here. And it seems like one time they came while we were pastoring Brad. But it was a real good experience, and I even think about a lot of times How I'd love to be living back in them woods over there. Kisatchie National Forest. Oh, ringing. Oh, man.
Well, we talked about Lenscomb. You decided to go to seminary. Why did you choose New Orleans?
New Orleans had the best curriculum, and it also, they were more open to us. I applied it. I didn't apply, actually. I called Southwestern, and they just didn't respond at all. So we decided to go to New Orleans, and it was a good experience overall. Now, I know for the first 3 months I thought I was going crazy because of the moving out of the country when you can't even see a house from the church. Moving into New Orleans where you can't see the churches for the houses and the mixture of people there. And I was working down at Woolco on Gentilly, the main street through that part of town, and it was a rough, hectic job, and I wanted to go back to Lenscomb so bad, but I knew they wouldn't call me back. And so one day somebody got me to preach for them one Sunday morning down south of New Orleans on the east side of the Mississippi River. And I drove down there and preached, and had a good service. And then I was driving back up the river to New Orleans. And so when I got to a certain section, it was so beautiful that it was as if the Lord just stopped me, and He spoke to me, and He says, "Tom, you love nature and you love all its beauty, but I want you to love the greatest creation, and that is your fellow man." And when the Lord said that to me, it just changed me completely around, my attitude and everything. And I drove back into New Orleans so happy and feeling so good that when I pulled in behind the apartment and parked the car, the cop pulled right up beside me and says, "Tom," said, "you driving a little fast there, aren't you?" And he said, "Don't do it again, or we'll have to give you a ticket." Oh, man. But let's see, what did I do at New Orleans? I worked at Woolco.
Yeah.
Yeah, I worked at the Woolco service station to start with. And they had a bunch of students working there. And I was next to last in seniority. And so they started off on the bottom and started cutting them off, and I was number 2 to go. And then I went over to the main store and applied for a job there, and they gave me a job working in layaway. And in New Orleans, well, all the different kind of people and all of that, well, it was kind of an amazing thing. I remember one of the black girls working in there, walking around behind me and rubbing inside my head and says, "Tom, you need to grow a bush." It says, "You just like one of us." But it was good. I enjoyed it there after I got it straightened out in my heart. That's what God wanted, and learned a lot there, you know, and what to say and not to say, you know. And I got along fine with the people that I worked with, and the ones that come in, the customers, some of them were pretty raunchy at times, raunchy, rough, mean, like, but I always lowered my voice and spoke kind words to them, and next thing you knew, they changed their approach, and so, but it was a good time, and a good time to just minister to people as they come in. A lot of people, everybody just about in New Orleans, I think, come in with some kind of burden or something going on in their lives that they were very unhappy about. And a lot of them were fast on the draw when it come to talking. You had to be careful, they'd really lambaste you. But it was a good experience overall in dealing with people.
Well, while you were at New Orleans, were there any teachers, any special memories in the classroom at New Orleans?
Yeah, in Hebrew. I wish I'd never taken that course, because Dr. DeLauder, they called him Slaughter DeLauder, because he was so tough on you. And boy, we went through that term of Hebrew so fast till, shoot, he gave me a B, but I didn't come anywhere close to deserving a B, because I just couldn't read the Hebrew. I mean, there was crazy symbols, and it still, instead of starting on the right-hand side of the page and reading toward the left, you started on the left side and you read to the outside. And so that just kept my mind just rolled up in a ball trying to understand all that stuff. But I didn't take one term. And the professor said one day, he says, now if you boys are having to spend over 2 hours a night on this stuff, says you need to drop it. And I was glad he said that, because I was spending 4 or 5 hours a night on it, and I was still funking it. Oh, man.
Well, who are some of the people you remember, and any memories with those people from seminary? Any of the students?
Students? Oh, goodness. Wayne Hoggle, I remember, Wayne and Romy. They came by to visit with us one day here at the house. They're still up around, shoot, I can't remember the name of the place up there. Kind of north central Alabama. Well, no, it's on the west side. Tuscaloosa, yeah. Wayne and Romy and, oh goodness, Jerry lived right next to us when we first moved in.
Ed?
Huh?
Jerry and Ruthie?
Yeah,
Gerard?
Ruthie Gerard, yeah. I remember them. They were from not too far east of here, down.
And the little boys.
So now, who are some of your fellow students at New Orleans that you remember?
Sam Self, he and I went to BBI together, and we were close friends, and he was so smart. He wanted me to come over and study Hebrew with him, and by the time I got in work, it'd be about 10 o'clock, 10:15, something like that. And he'd already studied and knew it thoroughly through and through. When I got there wasn't much studying left to do but me, and so I didn't get anywhere there on that study, but he was the smartest student I think I went to school with. And he was also a former Georgia football player. And but he was a good guy overall. And I have no idea. Last time I heard from him, he's living in Dothan, I think. And that was reading it, seeing it in one of the Florida papers.
Yeah. Who else?
Swain Poole, I believe. Wasn't that one? Swain Poole. Oh, I can't remember that much about Swain, but I know I really liked him. He was a good feller. I think he was from over in Georgia. I can't remember. Griffin, somewhere over there. Not far from where Janet used to live.
Well, you started pastoring at Hillsdale Baptist Church. Tell me how that happened.
That was in my last year of seminary. And they just called down there wanting somebody to come and try out for a pastor. And so most people there knew me, and I did a lot of supply work. And all the reports on my preaching came back good, you know, and so they recommended me to the church. And so I went up there and preached, and oh boy, I didn't know what I was getting into. They asked me to come as pastor, and I was anxious to get out of New Orleans too, but I had to drive 85 miles one way to school at seminary, and that was a big mistake there. But we moved up there in, let's see, 88, I believe. Was it 88 or 89?
79.
Yeah, 79. Yeah, 1979 we moved up to Hillsdale. And we lived a year there on Churchville, and it was a different kind of church. It was really an independent Baptist church. It called itself Southern Baptist, and they were not even involved in any kind of Southern Baptist activity. And after several months preaching and so forth and promoting the best way I knew how to a church that was anti-Southern Baptist, and finally somebody brought up one night at a business meeting that made a motion we give 10% to the cooperative program. That's the program that supports Southern Baptists. And also he made a motion that we return, or we go back to Southern Baptist literature. And that was a big gain, I thought, for the church. And Gordon Ballard was his name. He was the fellow that made the motion. And but that was the fightingest church I've ever known. Cantankerous, ornery, or whatever. I hate to say that about a church, but they just were no corporation unity or love there. I remember one lady, her name was Agnes Miller, and she was Charles Miller's daughter. You know, he was the principal of the school, high school, and she just flat come out the door about Christmas time. Well, right after I graduated on December the 15th, and it was next Sunday, I think, and she stopped. She was bad to stop and just chew me out good, because my beliefs and hers was different. And she was the Bible teacher, so to say, of the church. And she'd lead them off into these weird kind of things, you know. And I got in there preaching the Bible. Boy, she didn't agree with me. And she'd calm her at the door. And she would lay the law down to me. And her husband, Charles, he was a lot more kinder and friendly, and he was standing back in the background. He was just laughing.
Well, we talked a little bit about Hillsdale Baptist Church and some of the interesting things there. Tell me what happened when you got the call to come to Bratt, Florida to preach in view of a call.
I remember we were sort of happy about that because we were getting back closer to home. And I don't remember. I do remember just before it came though, that lady I was telling you about, Agnes. She cornered me in the door at church there one day and says, "Brother Tom, I want to know, are you planning on staying here with us after you graduate from seminary, or are you going to be moving?" She said, "If you're going to be moving, we're going to start hunting another preacher." And I told her I hadn't made up my mind, and really I hadn't. But
Keep going.
and so we preached at Bratt. I think it was maybe the last Sunday of the month of December 1979. And then they called us, and we moved from Hillsdale to Bratt. I think it was it was just a couple of days before I was supposed to become the pastor. But it was on a Wednesday, and I went ahead and did the Wednesday night prayer service for them, and that was the start of my ministry there. And it was a good move. Had a real good, solid church there. Everything was so well organized, and it was solid Southern Baptist, so I didn't have to have a fight or anything in that order, a verbal fight to help them get going in the direction we wanted them to go. And so we settled in, and we just really enjoyed it. It was like a big family to us, and they were all good to us. And I don't remember having any kind of problems or arguments there. Possibly we did have, because it's usually conflict of some kind, but that's normal, because no two people are alike, and in thoughts or beliefs or whatever. But it was a good experience for us, and we had almost 9 years, just a few months short of 9 years of service there. There's a lot of wonderful people over there, and I went back about a month ago for Bryant's baptism, and it was really, that church was packed out, and I got to see a lot of people there that I hadn't seen in years. And they also had, I'd say over 50% of the people there I didn't know. It had changed around so much. And all of them little kids that were there are now leaders in the church. I think that was a crow that hollered in.
Well, tell me about any special Bible verses that you have that you like, that you remember. What is your favorite Bible verse and why?
Philippians 4:4-7. Let me quote it to you if I can remember it now. I read it and quote it and muddle over it every night before I go to bed. And way this came to me when I was when we were living in Pineville, and I was working at UPS and going down and loading out trucks early in the morning. And that was a rough job. And then I'd come home about 8 o'clock and wash up and lay down a little while and get up and go to work for the camping center over there, Sinlaw Camping Center. Actually, it wasn't Sinlaw at first. I was working with Paul Maxwell in the hardware business in downtown Pineville. That was pretty rough. But when we came to Brad, all of it, I'd finished all my schooling and everything, and things in that direction and all the hard schoolwork I didn't have to do. It was just sermon preparation, and that was always joy for me, but always studying the Bible is a joy for me. And so it was just like a lightening of the pressure on me, because the church was so well organized and functioning so good. And we enjoyed it there.
Well, tell me about your favorite Bible verse.
My favorite Bible verse?
Yeah.
Philippians 4:4-7. See if I can remember it now. Rejoice in the Lord. Again, I say rejoice in the Lord. See, my mind went blank. But anyhow, the end of it tells us not to worry about anything, but in everything with prayer and thanksgiving, bring it to the Lord and leave it there. It's not the way it's written in the Bible, but that's what it says. To me, anyhow. And that has been one of the most helpful verses that I've ever read.